feed prices haven't just gone up, they've quietly exploded. In the last 5 years alone, the cost of animal feed has roughly doubled, and for most small farmers, backyard keepers, and homesteaders, that single change has been enough to turn a profitable setup into a constant struggle. When you break the numbers down, about 70% of everything you spend raising chickens disappears directly into feed. Not housing, not medicine, not labor feed. And somewhere between your wallet and your chicken's beaks, someone else is making very good money from the fact that you have no alternative. But here's the part that rarely gets discussed. There is a plant that doesn't need a factory, doesn't need shipping, and doesn't need a supply chain. It grows on water. It grows fast. So fast that under the right conditions it can double its mass every 3 days. Per acre, it produces more usable protein than soybeans. And once it's established, it costs almost nothing to maintain. Peer-reviewed research shows it can replace up to 45% of commercial animal feed without harming growth, health, or productivity. So, if something like this exists, the obvious question is why you've probably never heard about it from your feed store, your local extension office, or the people selling you bags of pellets every month. The answer comes down to 2 simple things. One has to do with how this plant grows. The other has to do with who benefits when you don't know it exists. The plant is called Azola. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why it works, how to grow it from scratch, how to harvest it properly, and how to feed it safely to chickens, ducks, cattle, goats, pigs, rabbits, and even fish for a cost so low it barely registers. And if you value practical knowledge that has been tested, proven, and then quietly forgotten, you may want to stick around. This kind of information doesn't show up very often. Now let's clear something up right away. This is not internet folklore. This is not a trend. This is not based on a single farmer who tried something once and got lucky. Azola is one of the most heavily studied alternative feed sources in agricultural science. Its effects have been documented in peer-reviewed journals across Asia, Africa, and parts of Europe for decades. The first large-scale feeding trials were conducted in India in the late 1970s. Researchers wanted to see whether fresh Azola could realistically replace part of standard poultry feed without harming performance. What they found surprised even them. Chickens that received diets where 20% of commercial feed was replaced with fresh Azola showed no loss in weight gain, no decline in health, and no reduction in productivity. The researchers went further and calculated production capacity. They found that a shallow pond with a surface area of just 60 square meters could grow enough Azola every day to feed 100 chickens continuously. That study was published nearly half a century ago. And the research didn't stop there. In the early 2000s, scientists expanded the trials. Chickens were split into groups. One group received 100% commercial feed. The other group received only 75% commercial feed, with the remaining portion replaced by Azola. At the end of the trial, both groups reached the same final body weight. Meat quality was identical, but the group eating Azola cost 25% less to raise. Even more interesting, birds that received a small additional amount of Azola, around 5% extra, actually grew 10 to 12% heavier than birds fed commercial feed alone. That suggested something deeper was happening. This plant wasn't just filler, it was improving overall feed efficiency. Decades later, the science became even clearer. In 2022, researchers published results showing that Azola could make up as much as 45% of total feed intake without causing harm. Feed conversion ratios improved. Blood chemistry remained normal. Liver function showed no signs of stress. Meat quality remained unchanged. The conclusion was blunt. Azola could be included at levels most farmers would never even attempt safely. Today, more than 90 independent studies from India, the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Nigeria, Egypt, and Nepal all point to the same conclusion. This works. Rice farmers in Asia figured this out over 1,000 years ago, long before modern feed companies existed. The science just confirmed what tradition already knew. So again, why has this stayed so quiet? The global animal feed industry is worth over $500 billion. Soybean meal alone drives international commodity markets. Entire economies depend on farmers buying feed instead of growing it themselves. Azola cannot be patented, it cannot be owned. It copies itself. Every time you harvest half of it, it grows back in days. There is no way to lock it behind a brand name or a supply contract. Agricultural systems are designed around inputs you purchase. Fertilizers, supplements, medications. Feed. Extension services are trained around products that move through markets. Azola doesn't fit into that system. Nobody actively hid it. There just was never a reason to promote something that removes you from dependency. But now you know. And once you know, the only real question is whether you're willing to use it. The setup costs less than a single bag of feed. Daily maintenance takes about 15 minutes. And once it's running, you're producing protein every single day. So now let's get practical. Let me show you exactly why this system works and how to build your own. Forget decorative ponds and garden aesthetics. What you're building here is not a water feature, it's a production system. Think of it like a small biological factory that runs every day. The goal is consistency, not beauty. Start small because Azola scales incredibly well. A pond with a surface area of 4 square meters is enough to learn the process and start seeing results fast. That's a simple 2 meter by 2 meter pond. Once it's established, that single pond can produce roughly 500 to 600 grams of fresh Azola every day without stress. If your goal is to replace 20% of the feed for 100 chickens, you'll eventually need around 60 square meters of growing surface. That works out to about 0.6 square meters per bird. The smartest way to reach that size is not one massive pond, but several smaller ones. Smaller ponds are easier to manage, easier to harvest, and much easier to recover if something goes wrong. If disease or imbalance hits one pond, you don't lose everything. Where you place the pond matters more than how big it is. Azola thrives in partial shade. It needs light but not full, direct sun. About 50 to 70% shade is ideal. Full sun will overheat it and kill it. Deep shade will starve it. Under a tree canopy works well, as long as falling leaves don't smother the surface. If you don't have natural shade, a 50% shade cloth does the job. Heavy rain is another enemy. Too much rain dilutes nutrients and crashes growth, so place the pond where it's somewhat protected. Keep it close to a water source because you'll be topping it up regularly. The ground must be level. Uneven ponds create dead zones where Azola piles up and rots. Dig the pond about 20 to 25 centimeters deep. If digging isn't an option, build a raised frame with wood or bricks at the same depth. Line the entire pond with plastic sheeting. Pond liner works best, but heavy-duty tarp or silage plastic works fine too. Before adding anything else, check carefully for punctures. One small hole is enough to drain the pond overnight and wipe out weeks of growth. Once lined, spread 10 to 15 kilograms of sifted soil evenly across the bottom. Remove stones and debris. The soil layer should be thin, about 2 to 3 centimeters, just enough to hold nutrients. This soil is not for planting roots. It's a nutrient reservoir. Next comes the slurry. Mix 3 kilograms of fresh cow dung into 6 to 7 liters of water until it's fully dissolved. Pour this evenly over the soil layer. This creates the base nutrient environment Azola needs to explode with growth. Now fill the pond with clean water to a depth of 10 to 12 centimeters. Do not go deeper. Azola has short roots and must reach nutrients at the bottom. Too much water slows growth. Too little water makes harvesting messy and damages the plants. After filling, leave the pond alone for 2 to 3 days. The water will settle and clear slightly as heavier particles sink. Once settled, it's time to add the starter culture. You'll need about 400 grams of fresh Azola per square meter of pond surface. Before adding it, gently break apart the clumps with your hands. Smaller pieces multiply faster, spread it evenly across the surface. Don't dump it all in one place. Uniform coverage matters from day one. For the first 2 weeks, do almost nothing. Let the system establish itself. Within 15 to 20 days, the surface will be fully covered and thick enough for your first harvest. From this point forward, production becomes continuous. And this is where most people fail because they treat Azola like a garden instead of a factory. A factory only works if the line keeps moving. Once harvesting starts, Azola must be harvested every single day. 5 minutes is enough. Remove the excess growth so the surface never becomes overcrowded. Check water levels and top up if needed. Remove any dead material floating on top. Missing one day won't kill the system. Ignoring it for a week absolutely will. Every 5 days you need to replenish nutrients. Dissolve 1 kilogram of fresh cow dung in water and pour it into the pond. Add 20 grams of superphosphate at the same time. This part is critical. Phosphorus is the single most important nutrient for Azola. Without it, growth stops completely. Superphosphate is cheap, widely available and non-negotiable. Every 10 days, replace about 25 to 30% of the pond water with fresh water. Remove old water first, then add new. This prevents nitrogen buildup. Too much nitrogen turns Azola yellow and eventually kills it. Once a month, remove about 5 kilograms of the bottom soil and replace it with fresh soil. Add a small amount of micronutrients containing magnesium, iron, copper, and sulfur. These trace elements keep growth strong and improve nutritional quality. Every 6 months, do a full reset. Empty the pond, clean the liner.
Check for damage. Start again with fresh soil, fresh slurry, and fresh culture. This prevents long-term pathogen buildup and keeps yields high. Once your pond is running, monitoring becomes your main job. Azola is forgiving, but it still operates within limits. Temperature is the first thing to watch. Ideal growth happens between 18 and 28 degrees Celsius. Growth slows below that range and accelerates above it. But once temperatures climb past 35 degrees, Azola starts to die rapidly. In hot climates, shade is not optional. Increase coverage and, if possible, position ponds where they receive morning sun but are protected from harsh afternoon heat. pH matters more than most people realize. Test it weekly. The ideal range is 5.5 to 7. Outside this window, nutrient uptake drops and growth suffers. If pH drifts too high, replacing part of the water usually brings it back into range. If it drops too low, adding fresh soil and a partial water change usually corrects it. Biomass density is the silent killer of Azola ponds. The surface should never become a thick, compact mat. Maintain roughly 200 to 300 grams of fresh Azola per square meter at any given time. That means harvesting daily. When the mat gets too dense, light cannot reach the lower layers. Those lower plants die, decompose, and release ammonia. Ammonia poisons the entire system from below. Overcrowding kills more ponds than any disease ever will. When something goes wrong, the plant tells you quickly. If Azola turns red or brown, you're looking at phosphorus deficiency or excessive sunlight. Add superphosphate and increase shade immediately. If it turns pale yellow and starts thinning out, nitrogen has built up too high or temperature spiked. Replace half the water right away and harvest aggressively. If growth slows for no obvious reason, check temperature, pH, nutrient schedule, and density. One of those is almost always the cause. Pests do show up. Snails and insects usually arrive through contaminated water or soil. As a preventive measure, add half a kilogram to 1 kilogram of neem cake to the pond. Neem suppresses pests without harming Azola. If an infestation gets out of control, don't fight it slowly. Drain the pond, relocate, and reset. Starting fresh is faster than trying to rescue a compromised system. Algae will try to compete. The solution is simple. Maintain a healthy, thick Azola cover. Azola blocks light from reaching the water below, which starves algae before it can establish itself. Now let's talk about harvesting and preparation, because this directly affects how well animals accept it. Use a plastic tray or basket with holes about 1 centimeter wide. Skim across the surface and let excess water drain back into the pond. Smaller fragments fall through and reseed the pond automatically. Rotate where you harvest each day, so no single area is stressed. Fresh Azola must be washed before feeding. Rinse it thoroughly in clean water. This step removes the cow dung smell, which many animals dislike. Skipping this step reduces palatability and feed intake. Washing is not optional. Once washed, feed it within a few hours. Fresh Azola cannot be stored overnight. It decomposes quickly and loses nutritional value. If you need storage, drying is the only option. Spread Azola in a thin layer on a clean surface in the shade. Never dry it in direct sunlight. Sunlight destroys key nutrients. Drying usually takes 2 to 3 days depending on humidity. Once fully dry, grind it into a meal and store it in airtight containers. Properly dried Azola meal keeps for months. Remember that dried Azola is about 5 times more concentrated than fresh. Feeding amounts must be adjusted accordingly. Now let's talk about animals, starting with chickens. Introduce Azola gradually over 2 weeks. Mix fresh Azola 1-to-1 with their regular feed at first. Some birds will reject it initially. That's normal. Consistency matters. They adapt quickly. For broilers, replacing 20 to 25% of commercial feed with fresh Azola works well. If using dried Azola meal, 5 to 10% inclusion gives the best results. Feed conversion often improves at these levels. Higher inclusion rates have worked in studies, but careful monitoring is required. For layers, the numbers are similar. Fresh Azola can replace up to 25% of feed. Dried meal works well at 10 to 15%. Egg production remains stable or improves, and yolk color deepens due to high beta-carotene content. Azola is slightly lower in calcium than commercial layer feed, so free-choice oyster shell should always be available. Waterfowl are even easier. Ducks and geese digest plant fiber better than chickens. They can handle 30 to 40% of their diet as fresh Azola without issue. Ducks have been raised on Azola systems in China and Vietnam for centuries. They'll eat it directly from the water if allowed. Integrated systems work well, but never let ducks into your production pond. They'll destroy it within hours. For cattle, feeding is straightforward. Offer 1.5 to 2 kilograms of fresh Azola per cow per day, mixed with regular feed or offered separately. Studies in India documented 15 to 20% increases in milk yield. Interestingly, the increase exceeded what the nutritional content alone would predict, suggesting improved digestion and feed efficiency. Farmers also reported better coat condition and fewer digestive issues. Goats and sheep respond well to dried Azola meal at up to 15% of concentrate feed. Studies have replaced up to 50% of soybean meal in goat diets with Azola while maintaining full performance. For browsing animals, Azola functions best as a protein supplement rather than a sole feed source. Pigs can handle 15 to 30% replacement of soybean protein. Some trials show slightly slower early growth but compensatory gain during finishing. It's best used as a supplement, not a primary protein. Rabbits are excellent candidates. As pseudo-ruminants, they digest fiber efficiently. Research shows 30 to 40% replacement of soybean protein works well, with around 30% giving the best economic return. Fish complete the system. Tilapia, catfish, and carp can receive up to 25% of their diet as Azola meal. Growth rates, survival, and immunity all improve. Integrated aquaculture systems where Azola grows on pond surfaces are particularly effective.
Now let's strip this down to the numbers, because understanding the economics is what makes everything you've heard so far click into place. Setting up a 4 square meter Azola pond costs less than $50 in most regions. In many cases, it's closer to $20. You need plastic sheeting, some soil, and cow dung. If you already keep livestock, the dung is essentially free. There's no machinery, no electricity, and no specialized equipment. Ongoing costs are almost non-existent. Superphosphate is the only consistent input, and it usually runs about 50 cents per month for a small pond. Water costs are minimal. Labor is 5 to 10 minutes a day. When you calculate total production cost, fresh Azola comes out to less than 2 cents per kilogram. That's not an estimate. That's based on repeated cost analyses from multiple studies. Compare that to commercial feed, which costs anywhere from 30 to 50 cents per kilogram and often more. When you replace just 20% of commercial feed with Azola, you're not saving 20% of your total costs. You're saving 20% of the 70% that goes into feed. That works out to roughly a 14% reduction in total production costs. Put real numbers on it. 100 chickens eat roughly 15 kilograms of feed per day. Replacing 20% of that with Azola means you're no longer buying 3 kilograms of commercial feed daily. At 40 cents per kilogram, that's $1.20 saved every day. Over a month, that's $36. Over a year, it's more than $400. A pond that costs $20 to $50 to build pays for itself in the first month. And that's just chickens. The real value goes beyond money. Every kilogram of protein you grow is a kilogram you don't have to buy. Every pond you build is one less dependency on a supply chain you don't control. Feed prices aren't coming down. Droughts, fuel costs, currency swings, wars, and export bans all hit animal feed first. Farmers who grow part of their own protein are insulated from those shocks. This knowledge already exists. It's sitting in university libraries, research journals, and agricultural archives around the world. Over 90 studies have tested it, verified it, and published the results. Yet it rarely reaches the people who would benefit the most. Backyard farmers, smallholders, homesteaders trying to raise animals without going broke. You have two options. You can keep paying higher prices every year and hope the market becomes kinder. Or you can start growing a portion of what your animals eat and take back some control. So here's the challenge. Build one pond this month. 4 square meters, less than $20 in materials. 15 days to your first harvest. Try it, measure it, see what changes. Then decide if you want to scale. And if this video helped you see feed differently, make sure you watch the next one on your screen. And if you don't want to miss practical systems like this in the future, subscribe and stay with us.